Okay, welcome everyone. We have Anna here from WTS doing a quick presentation on Proctortrack, what it is, how you use it, how to get it set up, and then she will be doing a question and answer at the end. This is our first of two sessions. At King's, you do have myself and Adam Taylor in the academic dean's office as sort of first points of contact if necessary. But really, as Anna will go through, the ongoing support for Proctortrack is supported by Central WTS. So they are the best folks to turn to. But if you are really just hands up in the air and not knowing where to go, myself or Adam, as I said, in the dean's office. So Anna, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself and Proctortrack.
Sounds good. So one little quick correction. I'm actually not from WTS. I'm from the office of the registrar.
My apologies.
That's okay. We all get mixed in together sometimes. So that's all right. So yeah, I'm Anna. I'm everything Proctortrack and remote proctoring at Western. And I'm joined here by my colleague Seema. Her camera is off and I'll just let her be for now. There she goes. Hi, Seema. So what I'll do today is I'll share my screen. Please feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions about something I'm talking about. And then of course, as David mentioned, we can do questions and answers after I go through this short little spiel. All right. David, I can see your face. Can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I know David shared this video with everyone, but I'll just go through our resources here. So to confirm, you all have access to our resources on extranet, correct? Anyone, David, do you know if everyone has access to these resources?
Everybody here should.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing a few thumbs up, but
perfect. I can't see everyone. Okay, awesome. All right, that makes sense. Okay, so essentially what you do is you go Exam Central here, and then at the top you see remote proctoring. So everything that I create, I put here. So I have steps. I'll just start at the top. And I'll just play this first. Hello, my name is Anna, and today I will explain Western's remote proctoring process. So what is Proctortrack? Proctortrack runs as an overlay on top of Sakai LMS. It takes a video while students are writing their assessment, and it monitors their screen at the same time. This means that you will set up your assessment just as you normally would for an online assessment in OWL test and quizzes or Gradescope, and then you will simply connect it to Proctortrack. Note that this means that no one is actually watching your students as they write their assessments. However, you will need to be available in case a student comes to us with a content-related question, or if we need to extend a student's writing time, as we will need your approval to do so. If your students have any questions or concerns during their assessment, they will contact us via the Western Exam Chat support on the course site page. Students should not contact you directly during an assessment. We will contact you if a student comes to us. The easiest way for us to communicate with you is via Teams. If you do not use Teams, we can communicate via email. This email being examcentral@uwo.ca. The first thing that you will need to do is submit an assessment request. When your assessment request has been approved, we will ask WTS to add Proctortrack in the Western Exam Chat support to your course site page. You will need to submit an assessment request 10 days before your actual assessment. After you have submitted this request, you can then move forward with setting up your assessment on OWL test and quizzes or Gradescope. You do not need to wait for the Proctortrack tab to be added in order to start this process. Please do this as soon as possible so that we have enough time to check over your assessment to ensure that things will run smoothly during your assessment. There are three great places to find information. The first one being the extranet, the second one being Western's remote proctoring website, and the third one being our remote proctoring team. You notice here are our resources on extranet. Step 1 is requesting an assessment. Step 2, setting up your assessment in OWL test and quizzes or Gradescope. Step 3, connecting your assessment to Proctortrack. Step 4 is onboarding. Now, every course site needs an onboarding assessment so that we can ensure that student systems are compatible with Proctortrack. If a student needs to update their operating system, for example, it is much easier to do so a week in advance rather than right before the start of an assessment. Additionally, a accommodated students need to onboard before you will be able to add their additional time in Proctortrack. So it is important to get this onboarding assessment up as soon as possible. Step 5 is setting up accommodated students. Step 6 is messaging the students. Here I have email templates available for you to copy and paste if you'd like. And step 7 is a quick video to ensure that your exam is set up correctly. When your assessment is ready to be checked over, please send an email to Exam Central. Note that we will have information sessions often, and I add this information to the bulletin board here on Exam Central. One last thing to know, if your exam is at 7 p.m., ensure that your accommodated students are starting early enough to end at 10 p.m. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Okay, so before I continue, does anyone have any questions right now about that? Or shall I just continue?
Out of interest, Anna, does your team field a lot of inquiries from students through the exam? So, well, instructors need to be available during the examination time period. I mean, it's hard to know, but what is the likelihood of them being contacted either for content-related questions or for extended time?
I would say there's at least one student with a question for every assessment, typically more. The issue is that if a student does need a time extension, my staff cannot go and add the time without permission from the instructor. So if we do have a student that for some crazy reason can't get into the assessment within 30 minutes, because we do give that half an hour buffer time for the student to get in, it's not a 30-minute additional time added to the assessment. It's just a 30-minute buffer. So the student is still writing for the exact exam time. So when they get into the exam, the timer starts ticking down, whether it be an hour or an hour and a half. But if that student goes over that half an hour buffer, we immediately contact the instructor and just ask, hey, what do you want us to do? The student's stressed. You know, if it's a 45-minute exam, 10 minutes is a pretty big deal, right? If it's a 4-hour exam, you know, the student will probably end and not care about those, you know, missed 10 minutes. But we definitely reach out to instructors, even to update them during the assessment. Some instructors like to know every single detail. For example, how many students are in the assessment? How many students are in your chat? How are they doing, etc. Are there any content related questions? And then we have instructors who tell us, here's my phone number, call me if there's an emergency. I don't need to know what's going on. So we do have instructors on both ends of the spectrum. We just say the best and fastest way to contact us is Teams, obviously because that's fast, it's instant messaging. We are checking our email during exams as well, but of course that just takes longer. It's one extra step. If it's Teams, it just pops up and then we can answer right away. This was a big deal during the final exam period when we had quite a few assessments going on at once. We don't expect that to continue. The workload will be manageable. So if an instructor does prefer email and does not like Teams, we're more than happy to communicate via email or through the phone. I do have instructors that I just pick up the phone and update throughout the exam. But again, we discussed that before the assessment. Like I mentioned in my video, when your assessment is ready to be checked over, reach out to me and then we can discuss at that point, how do you want to handle your final assessment? What do you prefer? And then we can adjust accordingly.
Okay, that's great. And in terms of easing the anxiety of students, is it wise to hold a assessment prior beyond the test assessment that they'd be doing? Would you recommend, say, a lower, you know, a midterm or a test versus that the first assessment they're doing is, say, their final exam? Or do you find that the test assessment is sufficient to, you know, acclimatize students to the environment?
Yeah, that's what our onboarding assessment is for, really. It shows students where to click, how to get into the assessment. Without the onboarding assessment, we do get a lot of really simple questions, not a big deal, but it's essentially just, how do I copy my passcode? Where do I go? Where do I click? You know, if a student doesn't do the onboarding, they may not even know to click on the Proctortrack tab rather than the OWL test and quizzes tab, right? If they have weekly quizzes, they're used to going to their assessment in the test and quizzes tab. You know, now it's an exam and they have to click the Proctortrack tab. right? So if it's during an onboarding assessment, the student can come to us, we can work out those details. But then we also have bigger issues. Like, for example, if a student's operating system isn't compatible, we can then help them update their operating system. And this takes about an hour, right? So if a student comes into their final exam, they have to update their operating system. Now they have a whole hour where they're sitting there updating their operating system, right? So it's mainly for those little things. Where do I click? How do I do it? What is it like? How do I download it? But then we do have those bigger issues too that we like to get out of the way.
Okay.
But I do have a page here. I'll just show you on onboarding. I know I skipped through things pretty fast in that video because I could spend hours and hours talking about it, and no one wants to listen to me for that long. So I do here have an onboarding sample test. So you can click on that. There's also a markup if you use markups. So I have this standardized operating test. You can copy and paste these questions. They're pretty straightforward and simple, just multiple choice. You don't have to use all 5. You're welcome to. Really, all we need is one question. The student submits that question, uploads the assessment. We're checking things like, if you are using an Excel sheet for your final exam or your midterm, we would like you to add that into your onboarding assessment so that students know, how do I download it? Can I open it? And then you're checking yourself too, right? You're checking to make sure that your settings are correct. We don't go through and check onboarding assessments, but we do go through and check all midterms and finals to make sure they're all set up correctly. And then we'll reach out to you if we find something that's we think is off, and we'll just confirm with you at that time. But we do go through and check everything to make sure it's all set up.
All right,
I
that's
think
great.
I answered the question there. Yeah. So just long story longer, the onboarding is fine.
No, and that's really that was really the question, is to, determine, is the onboarding sufficient that you found for students so that you don't need to, say, do a variety of assessments leading up to it. It's really around that student anxiety piece and just making sure that they're set up for success. So that sounds great. And yeah, I think the only other piece would be, I know it's sort of a minimum 5 days prior they should have done the onboarding test. Is that correct?
It's hard to say. We say as soon as possible for a few reasons. During the final exam period, Proctortrack got backed up because, of course, they weren't planning to have so many assessments in 1 week. And when they get backed up and they're not staffed according, because of course we didn't give them any warning, it takes longer to process those videos because Proctortrack does go through and watch all the videos. So they're the second line. The first line is the AI system that watches students and takes pictures of the screen. But then we also have the second line, and it's Proctortrack actually going through the videos, flagging and deflagging different checks throughout the assessment. So that's amazing. It just takes time to process. So that's why we say as soon as possible. Definitely a week in advance. Of course, sometimes, things happen like a pandemic and we have to get that assessment up 2 days in advance, and we just do the best that we can. It's not a big deal. Students can still write their assessment without doing the onboarding test. However, if you have accommodated students and your exam is over 4 hours, you will need to go in and extend the time in Proctortrack. So accommodated students need to onboard so that their name is essentially grouped in Proctortrack, because Proctortrack doesn't read information from OWL. Students need to click on the Proctortrack tab so that OWL knows that they're a student, without which Proctortrack has no idea. So you can't just search the student in Proctortrack to extend their time, which I can explain further. I can show you how to set up an assessment with Proctortrack if that's helpful. I can just go through a really quick assessment setup. If that works.
I think that would be great for everyone.
Sure. Okay, so I kind of did get this started right before this meeting. So I just set up a 1-question exam. Okay. It's a multiple choice. I think I said, is Proctortrack fun? Of course, the correct answer is very fun. So you'll see here about this assessment. I just titled it February 2nd so that I know, but please title it, of course, anything that you would a regular midterm exam. We have availability and submissions. So here you can put it to your entire site. That's fine. Unless you're having a midterm or a test for just a few students, you're more than welcome to create a group in OWL and then select the group here, whichever you prefer. But for the sake of this preview, I'll do entire site. Now, number of submissions, I'll put only one submission allowed. Now, if you're doing an onboarding assessment, please just put unlimited. Now it is available. And of course, I'm sure everyone already knows this OWL piece, but I'm just going through some, some of the details that we check over. So I'll say it's available at, actually, we'll just go 3 p.m. Actually, we'll say 3:40 a.m. We'll go 3:50 or 2:50 actually. And wants to go 2:25. That's fine. And then we'll put the time that it's due. We'll say 4:25. Yeah. That will work for me. Maybe it won't. Okay, and then this is important here. So this is the time that a student has to get into the assessment and write their assessment. But I can put the time limit here. So I could put the time limit as 1 hour. Okay, this means that the student has 2 hours to click on the assessment, get in and get started. However, they only have 1 hour to write the assessment. So as soon as they're in the assessment and they're started, the timer starts ticking down 1 hour. Next here, you put a password. This is important as well. I'll just put 1234. Now remember this password because you will use it when you connect your assessment to Proctortrack. And then the exceptions to time limit and delivery date. This is where you will pick your accommodated students. So you can make a group if a bunch of your students have the same accommodation, or you can add individual users. So you can pick your individual user, put the time it's available, the time it's due, if you're accepting late submissions. And then again, this is important over here, how long do they actually have to write the assessment? Has a time limit of, so that's an important one. And then add this exception. And you can do that if you have 30 accommodated students, you'll have to do this 30 times. Please contact our accommodated group. If you would like help with this, we're more than happy to help you if you have a lot of accommodated students. And we can also help you determine the time.
And Anna, just for clarification, all those parameters need to be filled out, not just those which are an exception. So if it's a student X and say they had 1.5 times, so they had 1 hour and 30 minutes,
Yeah.
but it was still within that 2 hour window, do you still need to put in the available and the due, or do you only need to put in that the time limit is the exception?
Yeah, you still have to put that in here. Yeah, okay. Because yes, this exception overrides everything that is up here.
Okay.
It overrides everything. So for example, if Susie's writing next week, you could actually put, it is available next week. And then this exception overrides the entire exam for that specific user.
And then, so everyone's aware, my recollection is that all groups or no groups are dynamic anymore. So once you've set up the assessment, whoever's in that group is in that group. If you added a student to that group afterward, you would have to rebuild the assessment, correct?
Actually, that's not correct now. So one thing
great.
that we have found is if, and I won't go into this in too great of detail, but adding extra time. So now I may confuse people here, but if a student, this is really the only complicated part, I promise. So if a student experiences issues, and I don't want to scare anyone away from Proctortrack because this is really it sounds complicated, but it's really not. And we're experts and we can do this super fast. So if a student is struggling for an hour, you gave them a half an hour buffer. So now they have missed 30 minutes of their assessment. What we need to do is we can't just go in and edit a live exam. This is very important. We cannot edit live exams. The only thing we can do in the moment is, well, what we could do before is just create a new exam for that student. We would go through, copy the draft version of the assessment, just release it to that student and change the time. It takes about 5 minutes. Then you connect it to Proctortrack. Your assessment's already created. It's just essentially creating a new assessment for that one student. You rename it so-and-so's exam, connect it to Proctortrack, name it something different. The problem with this is that you would have to go in and mark 2 different assessments. So If, for example, Susie has already written half the exam, now she's experiencing half an hour of technical difficulties for some reason, maybe her internet cut out, maybe OWL is just extremely overloaded and very slow, whatever that may be, then you would have to go in and mark 2 different assessments. Again, not a huge deal, but sort of annoying, right? It's extra time, extra resources, and figuring out where the 2 assessments are. Now we do have the second option now, and I have a video here for all of these steps. I have videos as well. They're a bit shorter. Of course, my resources are very detailed, so every single step, I say where to click exactly, just for instructors that want a very detailed instruction. So for the second option, actually, sorry, let's do the first option. So what you do is you create 2 groups, but you don't put anybody in these groups. Okay, so you add these 2 groups to exceptions and OWL testing quizzes. And then essentially what you would do if a student needs an extra half an hour, you would just go in and add that student to the already created group. The student refreshes, the student refreshes, and then they will have that extra time added. And again, I'm not doing it justice. I do have a video here that explains it, but that does work. So you can just add that student to the group and then they're good to go with that extra half an hour. Now, some instructors do not like this option because it does take a few minutes extra while creating the assessment. And the second option, essentially, we do for you. The problem with the second option is you are marking 2 assessments. This first option, while it is just a few more steps on the front end, it does save you from marking 2 different assessments, potentially. Did that answer that question, David?
Yes, it did, and that's great. And I'm perhaps revealing the fact that I've worked mostly in the previous version of OWL. Adam has been working much more in this version of OWL. So those are pieces that clearly I didn't realize that had been changed. So that's great.
Yeah, and we just figured it out, which is amazing. We figured it out after the final exam period, just because with a huge quantity of students coming in, it was very hard to then go duplicate assessments over and over again. And it just got a little bit time consuming for us. So we really dove deep into figuring out how to solve that issue essentially. But again, it is an extra step on the front end of the assessment setup. So don't feel like you have to do it. It is just an option.
Mm-hmm. But this is great, even if you weren't using Proctortrack, frankly, even for midterms or in class tests. So
exactly.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so setting up exceptions here, and then I'll save and publish. There we go. I don't like to display on calendar, but you can. So then I'll search for my assessment. Okay, so you'll see here's my assessment. It's active, published. I go to settings. I go to about this assessment. I copy it to my clipboard. I go down to Proctortrack. Manually add test. I paste that callback URL, which I just copied. I'll name it February 2nd exam. I put the start time. I'll just put 2, this doesn't really matter. For now, it doesn't, because this is a pretend exam. It actually does matter when you do it. This is AM, but whatever. We'll just do this for now. You probably won't see user here, but if you do, just put NA. The new version doesn't have this, but our testing site does. And then password, the same password that I put in before, 1234, and create test. So February 2nd exam, edit access details, I'll check that. So I erase this. Again, you won't have to do this. Your access code will be just your password because you don't have that extra little step. Your callback URL, the time, that's fine. Save changes. Then I'll go back and I will go to configurations. Now we have already set best practices here. So you'll see require face scan is on, require photo ID scan is on. Now you're more than welcome to click require room scan. Why not? By clicking it, it's set. You don't have to save anywhere. Okay. I actually like room scan. I think you should ask for a room scan. I would suggest to your students to show their entire room under their desk, whatever you would like to see as the instructor. You can then go to test settings. Again, I have prohibit copy and paste and a few others on, but if you would like to allow a physical calculator, this is where you add it. If you would like to allow a screen calculator, this is where you add it. Student settings. Now, if you have a student that is writing for more than 4 hours, this is where you would go in and add their extra time. I would say the majority of exams do not go over 4 hours. You may have some accommodated students with time that extends over 4 hours. When they have completed their onboarding, you can then go in student settings and add that extra time. We don't have anyone registered, so I can't do that for you, but I do have a video of that on extranet. And now we go to whitelist apps and URLs. This is where, so for example, if your students are using Excel, you would type in Excel, you could type in Microsoft Word, and then you just click it. You go up, you go yes. Make sure you allow it for Windows and Mac. And then you'll notice Firefox is allowed. You will notice that Chrome is not on the allowed list because Chrome is already set. So best practices, students should use Chrome for their assessment. That is the browser that works best with Proctortrack. And then we have Firefox on here as a backup. I would delete Internet Explorer. I would delete Microsoft Edge. But again, it's up to you. Safari is a big no-no. I would just go through and delete all of these probably, unless you need it. And that's where you, yeah, so this is where you add your apps and then essentially you're good to go. Everything's set. You don't have to press save. It's just all set up there. And then what you'll do the day of your assessment is you will hide test and quizzes. So you'll hide this so that students have to go to Proctortrack in order to enter their assessment. Okay, now when it comes to a password, when a student starts their assessment, Proctortrack will prompt them to copy and paste the passcode. Now this is a question that we get often from students, where is my password? It's just right above the video of themselves. It will say password and they just click on it. It's straightforward for a lot of students, but then also for a lot of students, it's not. So doing that onboarding again, will show them where to click. I also have a video on the remote proctoring website for students to watch. It's also in our student guide to Proctortrack. So if you'd like to download the student guide to Proctortrack and send it to your students in an email, that's amazing. I have a lot of information in there. I answer a lot of data security and privacy concerns that students have had over the years. And again, on the website, I keep that updated as well with all new information that we receive. So everything's there for you to check out. You can send your students there as well if there are any issues that arise. And other than that, I hope that I showed here that the majority of the time is just setting up your assessment in OWL test and quizzes. That does take the most amount of time. The actual connecting it to Proctortrack piece is really fast and easy to do. So if you already use OWL test and quizzes for weekly quizzes or midterms or exams, it will be a fairly straightforward process for you. But please feel free to reach out to me via Teams or via email. If you want to write down my username, it's AHODGS4 at uw.ca if you're emailing me. And then if you're messaging me on Teams, it's just AHODGS4. So please feel free to ask me any questions. If I can't answer it, I'll add someone in the group chat and they'll answer it for me.
Okay, that was great, Anna. Thanks very much. And for all the folks here, Dr. Melnick did send out the email via the Faculty OWL page with all of this information as well. Some of the good step-by-steps that Anna and her team have shared previously. So do check that out. As Anna showed, I mean, it really is just about setting up the assessments as your primary piece, and you're doing that anyways. So, so that's great. Anna, the one question I did have is, so you have your callback URL and you have the secondary password. Does that secondary password ever get disclosed to students, or is that merely for the communication between OWL and Proctortrack?
It's just for the communication. In rare instances, I share the password with the student if they really cannot grasp the concept of copying the passcode and pasting it. But that's rare. We do have shortcuts for students that show pictures of this is where you copy the password and this is where you paste it. But of course, sometimes students are stressed and they're just not reading. At that point, I'll send the password to them. But I mean, instructors, it's usually just their course site or 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have to be anything that is confusing.
All right, excellent. I see a hand up. Ask away. You can turn on your mic and your video, or just your mic.
Just mic. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Akila, and I'm gonna hold midterm, and I'm planning to use a Proctortrack.
Great.
But I have students who express their concerns that sometimes Proctortrack flags them. For example, if they want to go to bathroom and it stops the exam.
No, it doesn't stop the exam. Students can go to the washroom at any time. At Western, we don't stop students from going to the washroom. As the instructor, you can just tell your students, if you have to go to the washroom, just announce to the screen, but that's not even necessary. If a student is very worried about it, they're more than welcome to come to our chat and just say, hey, I'm going to the washroom. I just want to have that on record. But again, we're very open to students going to the washroom, taking their breaks, and coming back. That's more than okay.
Okay.
And Proctortrack will just keep recording. And I mean, I have had students ask if they have to bring their computer to the washroom with them. The answer is absolutely no. Leave your computer at your desk, go to the washroom and come back. If you do have a student that just wants a break, they want a breather, I just suggest to instructors, just tell the student to sit back, stay on camera, but they can just relax and take a moment to themselves to gather their thoughts. But again, that's up to you if you want to allow that. Some instructors also just don't want their students to look around. They want their students to focus on the screen. So that's completely up to you.
Okay. So another question, the type of midterm that I'm holding is students, they need to solve problem sets.
Sure.
They actually need to write it down. And the way I will post my midterm is just question sets, maybe Word format, maybe PDF. So students will read it and solve on their notebooks. Then maybe, I don't know, maybe they will just take a picture and upload it. So
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Yep, that's fine. And you'll notice in the Proctortrack settings, you can allow physical paper. So it's up to you. I do give options like if you want to see what the student is writing, just have the student tilt the screen to watch the page. If you trust the students to, just write on the piece of paper, have the screen facing their face. And then, yeah, I would just suggest they take a picture with their phone and then upload it, whether that be to the Dropbox, they can upload it and attach it as a document in Owl Testing quizzes. They can email it to you, whatever you prefer.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hi, may I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my colleague mentioned the Proctortrack can have level 1, level 2, level 3. So I'm interested about level 1 plus Zoom. So could you show me how to choose different level and what the level can hold me like level 1? What's the difference between them?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just show you here. Share screen. Okay. So Proctortrack levels. So level 1 and level 2 are best for tests and quizzes. Level 3 and level 4 are best practices for midterms and finals. And then we also have our Pro and Light software. Though I will say, up until this point, we have never had an instructor use anything other than level 3 Pro for a few reasons. The main reason being we really do push level 3 Pro because that's what students have been using all along since the start of the pandemic. Our fear is that switching up the levels may confuse students. Of course, we hope that's not the case, and you're more than welcome to choose any level that you prefer. But I would say the easiest and safest bet would be level 3 Pro, certainly. But if you are just having a weekly quiz and you essentially just want to use Proctortrack for a ID scan, then it's a great option. It just essentially shows us that the correct student is writing the correct exam, which is important. But it's basically just that ID check. And for level 1 and level 2, Proctortrack does not review those videos. So just keep
but
that
at
in
level
mind.
1, they can lock the browser, right? They can lock the browser. Is that right?
So we can't really lock any browser. What Proctortrack does is it flags. If say I opened up Google and I typed in a question, it would flag that. So as the instructor, you would have to go through and check those flags yourself. But of course, the AI system. So for level 2, the AI system does flag the videos. For level 1, it's just self-review. There will be no flags on the videos, but it does still help with academic integrity, because you are at least making sure that the correct student is writing, their exam. They're not having their sister write their exam. Or, when I was in first year, we would all gather and,
Yeah.
you're doing an online exam, students write their assessments together. It's just fact. But having them on video, doing that ID check, it does stop that for sure. And then level 2, again, the AI system flags it, that flags the video. So then you can, as the instructor, go through and watch those flags. But then when we get up to level 3, the AI system flags the system, and then Proctortrack goes through and reviews the videos. So that's a super important piece that is the main reason why I do push level 3 Pro, because we do have the Proctortrack team going through these videos. On the students' end, they won't know if it's level 1 or level 3. But I would say, it's up to you. You can use
Okay.
whatever level
Got it.
you want. To change it,
it.
I'll show you how to change it here.
Okay.
I honestly skipped that part because I really do. I shouldn't, but I do tell everyone to use level 3 Pro, because I do find it the safest, and it really does uphold, Western's academic integrity. Okay, so go to configurations here and then proctoring level. So it's very straightforward. You would just click Pro and then whatever you want, or yeah, so level 4, you could go level 2 Pro, or level 1 down here. So you just, if it's blue, it's on. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Maria.
Hi, Anna. Thanks for the review. I used Proctortrack last summer and the summer before, so I needed this review because I haven't seen it for a while. Can you just tell me, I did get my assessments approved, so I did get the email saying that the time and everything's fine. Do you know what the time delay is on getting access to Proctortrack on my OWL site so I can get the onboarding done with students?
Yeah, when was your assessment accepted?
This morning.
Okay, so Seema, my colleague who's on this call, as soon as she accepts the request, she puts in a request then to WTS to add the tab. Unfortunately, we can't add the tab ourselves. We wish we could, because it would be so fast, but
so I'll just keep an eye. I'll just wait a couple of days, and if I don't hear anything, then I'll follow up. Or
oh, it'll be yeah, either today or tomorrow.
Perfect. Sure. Okay, that's awesome. Thanks very much.
No problem. And sorry for the delay.
No, that's fine. No, I wasn't worried, because I've been through this and it works great. So I have not done it for over the last year, so that's why I needed a little bit of a reminder on how it goes. So no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And one really great update. I don't know if I skimmed through this too fast, but for the exceptions now for your accommodated students, you can add them all into one exam. So I know last year you had to do a separate exam for students that were writing.
Right, and I have caught that. So I know the exceptions can all be in the same. I will say last year we had issues with copy and paste in Excel, and I think that's been fixed now, right? Yep. So we did have some issues that, because for some of my exams, they actually do it in Word and Excel and then upload their submissions. So there was issue that students couldn't copy formulas across or data across.
Okay.
Do you remember that issue?
Yep.
I think I think it's fixed now, though. Fixed. So that's awesome. Yep. Yeah, thank you.
And again, put that in your onboarding.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to do that. Say and copy and paste and make sure it works. Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Anna.
Yep. No problem.
All right, anybody else? I think this is, I mean, I think it just goes to show, Anna, it was really well explained. And I know for me, certainly, it alleviated some of my concerns. Again, we're often focused, as are many of our instructors, on that student experience and the anxiety that they may encounter. And it sounds like that's all really well handled. Yeah, so this has been recorded. So for folks who wanted to revisit some, but again, Anna and her team have put out just excellent videos and how-tos that are very detailed. And so those are great resources to go to. So if there are no other questions, I thank everyone for coming. Anna, I really appreciate you coming out, and we'll see you in, I guess, on the 23rd, a couple weeks from now.
I will say one quick thing. Actually, one thing I've implemented quite recently is if a student is experiencing a lot of anxiety, we send them a Zoom link, and we have found that just chatting with them and working through everything face to face, it does help a lot, and it does ease that anxiety. So one thing we're really focusing on, not that we didn't before, but now that we've had time to figure out the systems and figure out what works best, we have found that talking to students face to face, it does help alleviate all of that. And obviously we want students to have the best experience. We don't want it to be stressful. So we're doing everything we can. And we're also very open to ideas. So if there's anything we can do to make your experience as instructors better, please let us know, because yeah, our ears are wide open for that.
Excellent. All right, thanks so much. And thanks everyone, and have a nice snowy afternoon.
Yeah.
It's coming down. So
Yeah.
see you later, Anna.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.